and welcome to you, sir. Now you push the button there and it'll go red. There you go. And 10 minutes, and I'll tell you when 8 minutes are up. If you want some questions, give us a chance then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you everybody. I haven't done this for 20 years, so please forgive me if I lose my way slightly. I hope I won't. Thank you all for allowing me to speak on behalf of my submission. In my submission, I have raised three important issues that will, I am sure, play a much greater role in regional planning requirements for the future. Climate change, energy resources, and the importance in educating communities to become more aware and involved in issues we face now and into the future. Climate change and energy will play, I am certain, a much greater role in your future planning, for its impacts will be very profound on our communities in our coming decades. With a changing climate and rising sea levels threatening to erode and inundate our low-lying cities and small coastal communities, forcing them to be abandoned and rebuilt to higher elevations. The consequences that will flow on from that instability of our climate systems will add greatly to the cost of remediation, with increasing disruption to our way of life. Adding to this dilemma will be the increasing difficulty to secure ever-depleting finite energy resources that are still the mainstay of our economic systems. As a species, we are at war with nature and at war with our climate. Yet for some strange and inexplicable reason, we fail to understand fully the serious implications that this will bring if we do not address these vital issues. In the past, it was always believed that climate change was a distant problem. Now we know better, that it is here and now. Yet nation governments and local authorities still seem to be in that mindset that we need not worry. Mother Nature will take care of all our environmental indiscretions. To make our concerns about climate change meaningful, if we indeed are concerned, we tinker around the edges, still stressing the greater good, still clinging to that belief that our economy must come first over the protection of our natural environment. What is even more disturbing is that many in our community do not understand the premise, the dangers of climate change and energy resource depletion. If we could only understand the mathematical equation of the exponential function, then we would realise that we exist in all intents and purposes on a finite planet. As human beings, we still seem to have that inability of common sense and purpose of mind for change, to avert the degradation of the planet's ecosystems from species extinction, soil and atmosphere degradation, and continuing pollution of our rivers and lakes and oceans, mirrored with its health problems that a warming climate will bring to our shores. As the renowned Dr. Martin Rees, science professor of cosmology at Cambridge University, UK, said in his latest book, Our Final Century, Our Terror, Error and Environmental Disaster Threatens Humankind's Future in this Century on Earth and Beyond. That business as usual is unsustainable. The protection of our natural environment must become sacrosanct to life. Nothing stresses this point more poignantly than Campbell Live on TV3 is illustrating recently on the state of Lake Waikiri in the Waikato, a lake toxic red, devoid of life. Is this to become the norm? Is this just an harbinger for those areas that have intensive dairying? Will this have consequences for Hawke's Bay if we adopt such a practice? Does this not demonstrate that intensive dairying is unsustainable and cannot continue indefinitely? We cannot continue to pollute and degrade our environment as we have done in the past. Nature and climate will forbid it, ensuring that we as a species are the loser. We need a sea change in our thinking, our best to reduce our carbon footprint, and as quickly as possible, if we are to assist in avoiding irreversible climate change. Even though we are a small nation, we must still play our part. Already we have the latest IPCC report pleading for all nations to wean themselves off of fossil fuels as quickly as possible. If we are to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And yet we are still possessed with that insatiable frenzy, searching incessantly for more fossil fuels, like a drug addict's addiction to drugs. For time is not on our side. Adding to this dilemma, a recent scientific report on the Western Antarctic ice sheet stating that it has now passed the Rubicon, unstoppable in its gradual disintegration in the coming decades. This is why it is so important, vital in fact, to reduce our carbon footprint, and that mass transit must take precedence over private utilities such as the motor car and roading trucks. The Gisborne to Napier rail is a case in point. Industries in all their forms need to be encouraged to use our nation's railway systems, and in so doing helping to reduce our region's traffic congestion, thus reducing the need for much less upgrading to our roads, and plus reducing our carbon footprint. I support you fully, Mr Dick's push to have this line reopened. Sadly, at present, we have a government that possesses just one invested interest, roading and road transport, that does nothing to reduce our carbon emissions. When will we learn how intertwined we are with nature, that we cannot place economics above all else? It is imperative we take stock of our future and how best we can produce our region's natural environment and its biodiversity, creating jobs that are truly sustainable. That is why I've stressed the importance how best we may simplify regional draft plans for the future, so as our community members understand the dangers, so that we can go forward to a more sustainable future. For if we fail to do this, then the consequences will be very severe on future generations. I leave you with this thought. Do we have the will and the foresight for change? Our unrelenting desire to extract fossil fuels at any cost give me a sense of unease, foreboding, in fact, for we are now entering the realms of extreme energy that releases oil and gas from shale. Is this form of energy extraction a panacea for our depleting fossil fuels? Will this form of energy ease the burden on our climate? In the light of the revelations of the Monterey formations in Canada, where the estimated ultimate recovery of its oil-bearing shale has been reduced by a staggering 96%. Knowing this, will this form of energy be a viable proposition? I have studied the science, and in that study I can say with some degree of confidence that it is not a panacea for our energy problems. Instead, it will add to our plight, exacerbate further our pollution problems. In the very near future, you will be called upon to give your consent or otherwise on extreme fossil fuel extraction. Please study the science before you commit. For much of these predictions on this method done by oil and gas companies and government agencies have been done too often on the back of an envelope. As the US EIA latest corrections on the Monterey Formation have proven, it will not be an answer to our oil and gas depletion. It will just cause a little blip on the radar before the bell curve continues to the bottom and the end of fossil fuel era reaches its conclusion. The tragedy is, our ever searching for the remaining fossil fuel deposits takes away vital monies needed to develop further renewable energies that will give us better chance for a sustainable environment and economic future.
2 minutes, Mr. Bowden.
Let me leave you with this statement. I wish to leave you all with this thought. Dilemma if you wish. The world consumes 86 million barrels of oil and substitutes per day. Over 95% of global consumption of goods, services and ourselves are bathed in oil. Where will we find another resource that has been so plentiful, so energy intensive, with the knowledge that if we consume all the finite energy on our planet, it will fry? Do we have a plan B? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Right, we've got a minute there for questions. Councillor Dick, are you...
Oh, just congratulations, Mr. Bowden, on an excellent submission that will have us thinking and certainly wakes us up after lunch. Well done.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing. I've read all about it and it's excellent.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Scott.
Thank you for that very passionate oration. I don't believe it's 20 years since you last did it.
It is 20 years. It is 20 years.
And you're very supportive of in general, of the Regional Council. But turning to the Napier Gisborne Rail, which you've put your mind to, As you are aware, the government has indicated that they won't return the line to
Yeah,
future
I know.
purpose.
I'm fully aware. Yeah.
Are you supporting an increase in council spending on saving that line as well as...
I definitely would. I think it's vital, Councillor Scott. It's vital that we reduce our carbon footprint. This is going to be one of the most vital issues that our nation and our world is going to have to face in the coming future. We can't avoid it. We are now plunged over that what we have put into the atmosphere, we've now plunged over that 2 degrees. So yes, we're going to have to see what Napier's going to be underwater eventually, maybe by the end of the century. But yes, I totally agree with what Mr. Dick is doing, Councillor Dick is doing. We've got to somehow change the mentality of the government. And that's not blaming this government. Labour government has done the same. Let's be fair about that, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. They have had the same mindset that we can go on polluting, we can go on producing car. I mean, I believe today Dr. White has said that we can't really go down this road of continuing to exploit.
Thank you.
Oil.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
Okay. Thank you.
Impassioned last plea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully Napier doesn't go into water by the end of today anyway. Now, we have next up an internal submission, and I think Ms. Pearce is here to perhaps talk about the tsunami display at the aquarium. 25.
Lisa, do you just want to come up to the front and then we'll just work our way through that particular...
So if people could go back to page 56 or 7. So so it was in regard to a specific regional project and the MTG funding leaving some residue which it is proposed to spend at the aquarium.
Right, okay, so...
Microphone, please.
So, a number of years ago, the council, this is way back, set aside $100,000 to contribute to the museum displays, specifically around civil defence, emergency management, education. And before the museum upgrade happened, we actually supported our 1931 display that went in there, and it was very well received and had a really good focus on the science and the risk of future earthquakes and what people should do in terms of preparing themselves for those things. At the time the council had set this funding aside, we basically used that to leverage some central government funding, and as a consequence we didn't spend the full amount, so we had a residual amount left over. And the suggestion at that time was, because the museum was getting redeveloped, that we should keep that aside and assist with the redevelopment and the new display that was going in. And so that was the decision that was made. And so then when the new museum got built and the new display went in, we made it clear that we had 3 key messages in terms of our CEDAM messaging that we wanted delivered as part of the display. But from our perspective, basically the museum only delivered on one part of that, which is giving people understanding about the history and what can happen, the impacts of earthquakes. But the other 2 aspects of our key messaging around the risk of future earthquakes and what to do, that component was fundamentally missing, we felt, as part of this display. There's a very small part that addresses that, but it doesn't address it satisfactorily from our perspective. So we had a discussion with the museum at the time, and there was an agreement that we would contribute half or $20,000 of the amount that was left over of the 45, and we'd hold back the 25 and use that to either support their educational program. So they've got an education program that they run with the schools in terms of visiting the 1931 display and perhaps introduce our messaging as part of that curriculum work that they do with the schools. Or possibly the other option is to support the education centre that's based at the National Aquarium. And there's some discussions we've got going on with GNS Science and a number of other scientists in New Zealand around the subduction zone research that's going on in our subduction zone right at the moment, which is quite exciting. So that's another option that we could do. So Basically, that's why we're holding back that $25,000. It's interesting to note too that when I actually had Paul's staff come to see me a few weeks ago, they pointed out that the museum still hasn't sent us an invoice for the $20,000 that we've actually agreed to pay. So I still actually haven't got the invoice for that. So I sent an email to the museum about a month ago, and I still haven't had an invoice. So yeah, it's interesting to note that. So yeah.
Councillor Scott.
Before we move on to the tsunami, my question was, have the museum actually refused to develop any technical, scientific aspect, even an interactive computer terminal that would allow that messaging to be got across? Which is one of the criticisms of the museum. There's not enough interactive stuff there for kids. So have we explored the potential?
We did ask for that, but no, they didn't want it as part of this. The curator basically, in terms of the look and feel and what she wanted to achieve, basically that's what they've got, yeah.
That's a good question. If we did carry this over, how long would it take to put this particular option, the preferred option, to bed? Would we get, how much bang for our buck would we get in the next financial year? I.e., would we have something happening early which we could utilise for the whole financial year, or do we come back to this question again in 12 months' time?
Well, because I've tried to liaise with the museum a number of times in the last 6 months over the education program, and I haven't had any answers from them. My feeling at the moment is that I'd actually like to direct that funding to the National Aquarium, in actual fact, and assist with the education display there. Liz was at a workshop we had last week with scientists and talking about the possibility of assisting the National Aquarium with the Education Centre there, and they've also got a schools program. We've got a tsunami display there as well that needs upgrading. So my feeling is that's where we should actually be putting our effort now, given that the museum doesn't seem to be too keen or
So a follow-up question then, if that was the preferred option, how long would it take to expend the money, create the package, program, display, etc., and get how much of the next financial year would we get bang for our buck out of this money, or would it be a negotiate for the next 6 or 8 months and possibly do something before the end of the financial year? That's my only concern with this. I mean, does this just keep going on?
Yeah. Well, if we pushed it towards the National Aquarium, I think that we would definitely use it as part of the whole East Coast laboratory concept, which is, I mean, that's something I'd need to take back to you guys to explain what we're actually talking about. But basically, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. It's our Fault program in Wellington, which is basically, it's a regional branded study where you're doing science research that we do already, but you actually put some branding around that and get the public interested about understanding the risks that they're living with. So we're quite keen to do something similar along the east coast of New Zealand around the subduction zone boundary and understanding our tsunami risk, etc. So I'd actually like to put it there. So to answer your question, if we put it there, it definitely would be expended in the next year, but it probably we wouldn't be seeing the results until the following year. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Pipe.
Lisa, are you saying then that what we didn't get at the museum, which is more the scientific aspect, particularly to do with tectonic earthquakes and so forth, that could be actually done at the aquarium? Is that what you're saying? So because it's to do with tsunamis and
yeah,
that's good.
I'd just like to express a view that I believe it's far more appropriately placed at the aquarium, because that is a centre for learning and experiencing about a natural phenomenon and the natural environment. The museum's not that.
Right.
Okay, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, that's all fine, but I just see it as a significant departure from the original purpose of that money, and I think we're going to start from scratch, and I can't see how this can be a carryover. I mean, this is not a delay in expenditure. This is a completely different.
Can we have perhaps a clarification on the Act and those sorts of things?
Yeah, the money was put aside under the Hawke's Bay Endowment Land Empowering Act, and it pertains to, and that Act came into enactment on the 1st of July 2003. And in that act it said that if land or endowment land had already been sold prior to the enactment date, then half of that balance, which was 200,000, so 100,000 came over, half of that sum could be used for regional or district projects as specified in the council's annual plan. So, so it's quite wide. You've got to, if the decision was to spend this money on something other than what Lisa's talking about, then you would need to put it in the annual plan and say this is what you intend to spend it on. And it would be a regional project, a specific regional project.
So why don't we just go ahead and do that? That sounds like a better process than the one we're currently embarking on.
Yeah, there's two options. One is Lisa's suggestion, and another one is another use.
Councillor Scott.
Come back and clarify that the original intention of the 100,000 that was set aside from that money was to educate people around the risks in civil defence. The focus was specifically on earthquakes, but it was a focus on civil defence education.
Displays, specifically, public education displays.
Tsunami would still be within the, enhancing the tsunami display would still be meeting the purpose of that decision.
Yes, certainly. I mean, my intention would be that we actually focus on the three top 5 hazards, which includes earthquake, tsunami and volcanic, which are all interrelated. Mm.
Could I follow that though? Have you not got adequate budget now to do that?
No.
I'm getting close to a decision end of it. Any other questions? Well, hang on, it was a question here. Sorry.
Well, with that broader definition or purpose that was just stated, it still seems to me that if there were $25,000 to spend on education around these risks, that there might be other computer-based, other internet-based, as opposed to a location-based display in a facility. There could be online tools made available to schools. There could be any number of things done that might be a better investment of that money. So I guess I'm not convinced that just rolling it forward is the right thing to do.
So the question in that was, and not necessarily a question, but is there other opportunities there to deliver this better?
It's interesting because, I mean, yes, you're right. You can use online facilities, etc. But certainly the research shows that in terms of schools visiting a facility and actually having interactives and things like that, that's hugely beneficial in terms of educating about what to do. And certainly when we had as I said, we had this workshop last week where we had some international scientists here sort of talking about, and we talked about the idea of having a central focus for such a regional branded study, and they said that was an excellent idea. Certainly in terms of It's Our Fault, the focus was Te Papa, where they actually had educational both scientists coming in to talk about the issues at that particular museum, and then being able to see visuals about what they were talking about at the museum. So I think you've got to have both.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Just to clarify that, the education unit at the aquarium, how many schools go through there? How many school children take advantage of that? Do you have those?
I don't have the numbers with me. I can certainly get them, but apparently all the schools visit the aquarium. Perhaps in primary schools, we're talking about at least once every 3 years. Mm.
Thank you. So you were happy to test this, Councillor?
I'll test it by moving that $25,000 on project 877295 be committed to the tsunami display at the National Aquarium.
So the recommendation is it's written there.
To seconder, I just wonder if the mover would consider picking up the wording in the original thing to assist with the funding of the emergency managing key messaging with the final project to be brought back to the council for approval. Would you consider that?
I've got no problem with that.
In which case I would second that, and it just leaves us a chance to
So we
look at
still
the
have
final
another
shape
go
of
at
it.
it. Okay, which
Can I speak?
may satisfy others. Yes, you wish to speak.
Look, I don't see this as something new. It's something that our staff, expert staff in this field have been working on for some period of time. They've done the right thing.
Sorry, Mike.
They've done the right thing in bringing back to us concerns that the original location for the planned expenditure would not be as effective as it could or should be. So Lisa and her staff are to be commended. And the option that's been suggested of throwing it wide open and saying, hey, people of Hawke's Bay, here's 25,000, what should we do with it? I do not view that prospect with any great prospect of enjoyment.
Seconding it, Mr. Chairman, I do support some of those sentiments, but I also think that maybe what does concern me is that the entry fee to the aquarium is quite high, so the ordinary public doesn't often access it, and maybe citing a terminal here in our own building where anyone could come and access it could be. Certainly the existing tsunami display is very good, the modelling on it's very good, it's quite impressive, but I'd like it just to be able to explore the fact that if we're going to go on with this educational thing and we haven't found the right venue for it, we should make sure that we've checked out good access. So where it's sited, perhaps in the foyer of the aquarium where you don't have to pay to get in or something like that, I think those alternatives should be considered and making it available to the greatest number of the public that you can. So just leaves it a little bit open to some innovative thinking.
Thank you. Other speakers? I'll take an opportunity to speak. I will support this on the basis something will come back to the council. The challenge I see is the work hasn't been done yet. There is still work to do with experts in the field. Initial discussions have been had. I do believe in this, the challenge we have with our coastal strip, etc., is worth expanding the knowledge to more of our populace. So assuming the right vehicle comes back, I'm prepared to support it at this stage. Other speakers? Councillor Belford.
I just think in terms of our investment we're about to make in a coastal strategy and all the risks that we're looking at in association with that, so forth, eventually we're going to have a significant public education effort that is not particularly aimed at school children. And we have to rethink what the audiences are, what do we want to communicate, how effectively can we communicate it online to make it maximally accessible, and just another display at another place seems to me to be kind of a trite, not very effective solution. So I'm not supporting this.
Yeah, so I would support this. It's a beginning. I agree with what Councillor Belford said, but I think it's a good beginning. That I'm quite interested what graphically you have, because I think it's a beginning of maybe kids, but their parents go there too with them generally, and all often. And we do need to start telling our community about what a tsunami would do and what rising sea levels will do, and because they're very ignorant about it. And so I do support this. It's just 25,000. It's not a huge amount of money, and it's a small beginning.
Councillor Bevan.
I agree with the point that Councillor Belford's made with regard to education on coastal erosion. It's a huge problem for the future, but it is for the future, and we don't have a strategy to do that yet. So on the basis that it's going to come back to us, I'm prepared to support it as well.
Thank you. You wish to sum up?
Only that, look, this funding's been there. It's pretty much circumscribed as to what it can be used for. Let's get the job done and finished and out of the way.
Thank you. I'll put that motion. Someone departed just at the wrong time, but All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Okay, thank you. Right.